To prepare to make your embroidery patch, that is just basically sewing. It's using colored thread to basically draw. You're going to outline and you're going to fill in with colors of thread to make an embroidery patch. When I say patch, you can cut this out when you're finished and then sew it to anything, to jeans, jean jacket, any kind of clothes. You can also just leave it in this embroidery hoop and have that be the artwork. And so this could be the frame. So it's up to you. You can either make it a patch that you sew on, or you can make it a piece of artwork. You'll have this sheet. This sheet is real important because this is what tells me what to gather up for you, which colors when I make the kit. This thread is more expensive and I want to get you the exact colors that you want. So here is the area that you're going to draw your design. You will either create your design on your own, or you can look online and find an image. I found an image of a flower, and you can also actually trace with your computer screen. It makes a perfect light box. If you're having trouble tracing because there's stuff on the back, you can just trace this circle on a plain piece of paper and put that up to the computer screen so that you can trace whatever image you have. So once you have drawn your design, so I drew mine in pencil, and then the most important thing about this sheet that I need is I need to know what colors you're going to use. So I colored in my flower, and I don't want just one color of pink. I wanted multiple colors. So I have a light pink, a medium pink, and a red. And I want a yellow and a green. So I'm going to eventually put these little yellow things, and I want to do green for the leaves. So this is what I need you to take a picture of and send to me so that I know which colors to get for you. So you'll list them down here, what colors. So color in your patch, your design, and have that ready. Then when you get your kit, you're going to get a piece of fabric, an embroidery hoop, and it's actually two fit together, a tapestry, an embroidery needle, and your colors of embroidery floss or thread. And there's like really beautiful colors to choose from. So they're nice and vibrant, and there's all different types of colors within each category. So when you get your kit and you have your design figured out, this fabric, you can just trace right through it, and you will trace your design in pencil lightly onto the piece of fabric. So you'll draw on here, and that's what I already did on this. So here is my plan for my embroidery. So then what I would do, you will take your hoops, they'll be stuck together. You're going to unscrew to loosen it up so you can separate them. This one will be inside the other. So on the smaller hoop, you will put your design centered on that hoop, and then you'll loosen this up, you'll press the bigger hoop over it, and then you'll tighten up the screw. And before you have it all the way tightened, pull your sides. So you want it nice and taut so it's smooth. Push this down over it, tighten, tighten, tighten. When you get it all the way tight, you can still kind of pull it so it's taut. Okay, then when you're ready to start, we're going to start with an outline. So we're going to stitch. There's two kinds of stitches that I have on the back of that sheet showing you. There's a running stitch and a back stitch. A running stitch makes a broken mark, and a back stitch makes more of a solid outline where there's not the little breaks in between. So I'll show you how to do those. This time you're going to cut 10 inches, 10 to 12 inches. So not nearly as long as we did with our tapestry pouches. And some of you will have a threader, and that's what this blue little, it looks like dental floss. If you want to use this, if you're having trouble threading your needle, let's see, these needles aren't too hard to thread. You're just going to thread them like we do, like we did the yarn and the tapestry needle. But if you're having trouble, the purpose of this, you first put the point of it. It's like a pointy thing with a loop. You're going to put that through the eye of the needle. You'll put your yarn through the little blue hoop. Then you'll pull this through the eye of the needle. Oops. So then you pull this through, and that pulls your thread through for you. So if you see one of these in there, that's what that's for. So you want to thread it, you'll have just a little bit folded over. You'll hold on to that as you are embroidering, but you're not tying the thread to the needle, because that knot will get in your way when you're trying to sew, make your stitches. Okay, we do want to put a knot at the end. So just go around and through. You could go a couple times. I kind of twist it when I do that. And you just need a knot, little knot to make it stop when you are sewing, when you're stitching. So I'm going to start with my outline. If I want to do a running stitch, so I'm going to come in from the back and say I want to outline a petal. A running stitch is just coming in from the back, going back in. Then there's a little break. You can't come in the same hole, or that kind of tears the fabric. So I can go like right next to it and put a stitch. So you're just doing like a little broken mark, and you want to kind of get your yarn from the back pulled through. Okay, so I'm going to follow my outline, and I'm just doing a running stitch. And you'll see it's a little bit broken. So there's a little bit like a dotted line, and there'll be a little bit of a break in between your stitches. And I would outline this whole petal. A back stitch is where I'll do a back stitch now. So I'm going to come from underneath, and I'm going to make my stitch in front of where I want it. And then I'm going to go back down into the end, the hole that I stitched my last one. This will make it it won't be broken. There won't be the space in between. So I'll show you again. So I'm coming up ahead of where I want my stitch, and then I'm going down into the end of my last stitch. And I've got some little tangle. So, I mean, it's still a little, it's a little jaggedy, but there's not that space in between. But when you're trying to go around something that's curvy or it changes, you have to use, you can't do one long stitch, because then it would just be straight. So again, I'm going to go back into the end of that stitch to do a back stitch. So this is, I'm outlining this petal. Here is a running stitch. Here is a back stitch. So the back stitch is just coming in front of, like if I want to fill this, and then I go back into the end of that last stitch for a back stitch. When you finish doing, when you finish stitching any color, you do need to tie it on the back. So I'm gonna use my needle to make a knot, and I'm gonna push that knot so it's as close to my fabric as I can do. And then I am gonna cut this because these little ends get in your way when you are working. So after you outline, then you will fill in with your satin stitch, and satin stitch is just like coloring in. Okay, for a satin stitch, I want to see all of these different kind of colors filling my petal instead of solid pink, one color of pink. So I've already started sewing some of those in. To save your thread so you don't use a whole bunch of this, a satin stitch is just going from one side to another. You don't want to go further than an inch, or else it's all loose on your fabric. So here is like a darker pink that I'm going to start adding in. I want these to kind of radiate out from the inside, and it would just be like coloring. So I looked at my flower, and I really liked how it had these. Now, instead of coming underneath and coming back here, I'm wasting that thread. So if I wanted another one here, I would actually come in here. That way I'm not going all the way back and using up too much thread. So I'll go back. And so this is just kind of so instead of then coming back in up here, I'm gonna, if I start it down here next to where I ended, I'm not wasting the thread. Okay, like say I want those dark pink striations in it. So you will fill up your shapes. I could do just a solid color, and I would just go from here to here and then back and then back. And then I'd come back in and I'd go back. And you're just basically coloring in with your embroidery thread. So I like all the variations of different colors. So I noticed like the edges of my petals were a darker pink. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add some of this like medium pink. And actually I have 3 pinks and a red going in this. So I really like seeing the variation, but I'm coming in and I'm putting my stitches in the direction of the petals. So I wouldn't want to do my stitches like sideways. If you're doing something in nature, pay attention to what direction those lines go. So I want to fill this kind of in with a slightly darker. Anytime you do anything in nature, you have all kinds of subtle variations in colors. And I think that's what makes them look really beautiful rather than just one solid color. So I was looking at a photograph of a flower. So if you're doing something and you want lots of cool tones and you want it to look really vibrant and natural, look at an actual photograph instead of like a cartoon or a pre-drawn image. So here I'm putting in this little slightly darker edge of the petal. I just wanted you to see that I don't necessarily have to fill them all in with pink. Now I could, if you did want something to be all one color, you could, a satin stitch is just going from one end all the way to the other. And it's like you're coloring in. So say I wanted this petal to be this one pink. Remember, I'm coming in right next to where I left off so I don't waste my thread by coming back all the way over here. So I could go, and this is almost too long of a stitch, but it's okay. So I was saying don't go more than an inch because then they're not really attached. So here's a satin stitch where I'm coloring in, and I could get this really solid if I wanted, but even still I'm going in the same direction as the petal rather than filling it this way, because that is the direction of a petal. So here is a satin stitch. It's not super neat. If I wanted it to be really full, filled in, I could go in there in my little empty spots. But this is a satin stitch. So this is just filling in with color. So like if I was using a marker or a crayon, I would go like this. You're doing the same thing with the thread. Okay, when I'm looking at my plan, I want a red circle in the middle. So I'm gonna just color that in. So I tied a knot at the end, and I think I'll do a little outline around it so that it looks curvy. So I'm gonna do a little tiny back stitch. So I'm kind of outlining the circle. It's probably hard to see when I'm doing this. I've got already some red little striations coming in. So I might add a little something to this color so it stands out as different from the little striations. I think I will. What's nice about this is it's really just like coloring or painting or drawing with colored pencils, markers, crayons. So my circle looks kind of square, but that's okay. So I've kind of outlined it, and then I'm going to do little satin stitches to fill it in. So it's just coloring in. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go here. And this is such a small little distance that I could just come back next to that. I think I'm coming up through another stitch. And I'm just filling this in. I do one more little stitch. And then I have my little center shape. So you see how this is red? And I might add maybe a couple little dots of black or green. I'm also going to add in, because I had these really cool, I don't know if those are pistons. I forget my terminology, but so they're a little line with a circle at the end that's yellow. So those will sit on top. I didn't do those yet because I want those to kind of be on top of my petals. Okay, so I added a little bit of these little piston things in a couple of colors of yellow. I wanted to show you how to outline a shape. So if I'm doing my leaf, I'm going to do my back stitch because I want it to be kind of solid. So it's curved a little bit. So I go in front of my stitch. I have it drawn on here in pencil lightly. And then I go back into the end of my last stitch. This is so you have a kind of continuous outline. So I go in front of where I want it, and then I go back into the end of my last stitch. So this is a back stitch, and this is me outlining my leaf. So I go in front, and then I come in and I go back into, you can kind of see through my fabric. So I made my leaf kind of funny shaped. So I go up ahead where I want it, and then I back stitch back into the end of my last stitch. And then I'm going to come over here and go back into my end of my last stitch. And I have a knot. Okay, I'm going to take this out and then start back. Okay, got it out. If you have too long, this is probably too long. They have a tendency to get tangly. So if I want to fill this, I'm going to go in the direction that this leaf would go. So I could do like a solid, if I wanted this solid green, I'm like coloring in, I'm filling in. Remember to save the thread. Instead of going back to the bottom, I'm going to come back in right next to where I came out to fill this with a satin stitch. So that's on the back of that sheet also. This is just coloring in. Now this, I might put some little veins in on top of it. And I also might use another green just so it's not real flat looking. So just like with the petals, I put different kinds of pink in there. I could do different kinds of greens for my leaves. But I wanted to show you a basic satin stitch. So this is me like basically coloring this leaf in. Come in. And I'll do another little one here. So that's a satin stitch. This is just filling it in. Let's see, this is kind of close. So I could move from here out. Then I come in next to where I came out so I don't waste my thread. And I'm just filling in this leaf. Okay, so I filled in my leaf. I'm going to tie it on the back. So while it's still on the needle, I'm going to kind of go around and through itself, make kind of a knot, try to put that knot close to the back. And I don't worry so much, obviously, about the back. So you see mine's a mess. I just sew another piece of fabric onto it. If we were in the building, I have this fabric glue that I have you just glue a piece of fabric to the back. But you will be just cutting out your design and then sewing it to something else, or you're leaving it on here. So it really doesn't matter what the back looks like. So this is the back stitch. This is the satin stitch. There's all kinds of stitches that you can make. So if you want to YouTube it, there are so many different things that you can try out. I use this book and kind of practice doing different kinds of stitches. But for a patch, your back stitch, running stitch, and satin stitch are the basic outline and fill-in stitches. Okay, this leaf I'm stitching so that it goes in the direction. If I imagine there's a vein in the middle, so I'm making it come out from the middle instead of the satin stitch all the way in one direction. And I'm thinking this will probably look more like a leaf because they have the vein in the middle and then they come up. So I want to show my leaf kind of behind these petals. But just play around with the direction you want to put your stitches. Think about whatever it is that you're you're making and then what direction, you know, those colors would be. So this is another way to do it. This is also helping me for in between these petals. And please don't everybody make a flower. This is just what I happen to choose. Pick whatever design you want. Can be anything. And you can trace these from your computer screen. Like if you see something you think would be really cool, your Chromebook is like a light box, and you can just trace right onto your paper and then trace right onto this. So I'm making like a V. So I'm doing half this direction and then the other half coming from here to see if this will look more like a kind of the texture of an actual leaf. And I think it does. So kind of wish I would have done this on my other leaves. So just by the way the stitches are going, I think it looks more like a leaf. But I think I'm going to stitch in some little veins on these other ones. So if you can see the texture of this leaf compared to the others, I think that looks good. So I'm going to go in and make maybe a few little accent detail of maybe some little veins in here. But basically this could be it. I could leave it like this, and I could leave it in the hoop if I wanted this to be the piece, or I can show you how to cut this out, and then you could sew it to anything and it can be a little patch. All right, so I added some little bits of black. Not sure if I like it or not. So I just did little places here and there instead of like outlining the whole thing, which you could do that. It will look a little more cartoony if you outline everything in black and just fill it with the color. But this is it. I'm pretty happy with this. So I could either trim these edges or just kind of fold them in and tape them, and this could be my finished piece, or I will show you how to cut this out, and then you could sew this onto anything. So with embroidering, you can make this patch and then attach it to clothing, or you could actually you could embroider directly on your clothes. So like a pair of jeans, a jean jacket, those are always cool. And you could just use the same technique. With the jeans, they're stiffer, so you wouldn't necessarily need a hoop, but you can use this hoop also on other fabrics, even, you know, already made clothes. So that's it. Just make sure I need to see this so I can get you your colors, and then you will get a hoop, a needle, and your embroidery thread, and you should be ready to go.